In this video, I'm going to be discussing a specific individual who is a public figure and is not above reproach, and has done a bunch of things that have resulted in him being criticized. I'm not piling on here. Someone asked me very simply this. Would love to hear your thoughts on what a particular doctor has been going around saying about the current medical situation. He was on Joe Rogan's show. Appreciate your vids. Godspeed. Thank you. And on that note, ironically, I am an atheist, liberal, reality-based person. I exclusively want facts. I know my biases can get me killed. It almost has happened a couple of times. My own idiocy is I am my worst enemy, like every one of you. And I'm going to state a couple of things for the record. Because I'm a fact-based liberal, I feel comfortable almost exclusively criticizing, we'll call them liberals. Most people assume BLM, Antifa, and cancel culture, and the Me Too movement and the Listen and Believe movement on the internet, not in reality, are liberal. I criticize them vehemently whenever they screw up because activists don't solve problems. They create crises to evaluate and be part of. They do it to pursue clout. And yes, BLM is right. There is an actual problem to solve. Antifa, yes, again, there's a real problem to solve. Burning down my city, Portland, didn't do any good. Closest they've come to in this town that I'm hiding in is parading literally in front of the building. Just a normal parade. Making some noise before 10 p.m. They didn't do the stuff you might be seeing on TV. Still think the organization needs to clean up their act and stop letting itself turn into this. The minute a fire gets started or when it gets broken, you're done. Go home. They need to pay back by undoing or not doing more. November 2020. In a U.S. Senate committee hearing on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs, a medical person, Peter A. McCullough, was asked to be a witness. What does the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs hearing in the U.S. Senate have to do with a doctor? He repeated an endorsement of hydroxychloroquine. It's an anti-parasitic drug and also an immunosuppressive drug that would reduce your ability to fight a fucking infection. And he knows that. I want to point out that Peter A. McCullough is I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly, is a brilliant, borderline genius level researcher and contributor to the world of cardiovascular problems. He's a cardiologist and a bunch of other things. He's got one name on his skin on the wall and the rest of the stuff around it like a constellation of everything else he's contributed in. You can read his papers. If you can understand them, you'll be very impressed. But this immunosuppressive drug has a very nasty habit. People who endorse it, in spite of it being found to be not effective against, name that product, go on to repeat, yes it is, in spite of the facts. And inevitably, even if it'll take forever, we find out that they had a financial conflict of interest. But this isn't him, this is others. And they all have a habit of throwing their reputation into the shitter, and then later on we find out that they got a house and a yacht paid for. Or maybe they throw all their money into investment money and didn't want to lose it. Or maybe they're like, some annoying orange bastard who made sure there was so many gag orders and non-disclosure agreements that nobody will ever find out. Yeah, I'm a little ticked. This is a doctor who has an impeccable fucking history. And he goes ahead and does this. Now, it was found ineffective in any clinical trial that used randomized double-blind testing. That doesn't take that long. It didn't. It only took till July of 2020 to find out it doesn't do any goddamn good and actually made people sicker because it's an immunosuppressive, among other things. It has side effects. There's no such thing as a medicine that doesn't have side effects. If it has an effect on you, not all the effects are going to be on target. He avoided that double-blind testing and randomization and all that other shit in his own April study. That if you read it, also doesn't come to the conclusion the stuff doesn't work. It lacks any data, meaning he made a study up that broke his own rules. You see, he has papers up where you can see him railing against people not using randomization and double-blind testing, saying some very colorful explanations of exactly where to stick a hot poker in these fuckers. But he goes and does it. Advocates for studies that do the same thing. And I'm not supposed to just sit here waiting, gee, I wonder when we'll find out how much money he's got into it. But I don't know why he did that. But I am seeing somebody do every other part of it. He threw his career into the shitter. Let's go. He also said to justify refusing to do its essentially basic science, public health crisis justifies compromises on best practices in medicine, medical research. Isn't that something that a lot of people said was being done when they were doing the way too fast studies of a vaccine that we're using now? Many of them. Well, no. You see, when you normally do a vaccine study, you pick and choose the people. By that point, if you're not aware of it from previous video, the United States was already filled with people infected, so there's no such thing as a control group. There isn't one. So all you're doing is testing effectiveness. First thing they tested for the vaccines was really simple. Does it cause people to get sick at any dosage? Slowly increase the dosage in a group of people. Okay, we're getting negative reactions. Drop it down to the 90th percentile of what that was so that they can't have negative reactions. Keep testing. These are volunteers coming in saying, I'm volunteering for a vaccine because we need one. What happened was, if you're not aware of it, the Food and Drug Administration, after they proved it wouldn't hurt anybody, you have to get to the point that over 1,000 people have been tested and nobody gets sick at a dosage. Then they said you can do it at the 80% of that 90% mark, even lower dosage, and then see if it's effective. And then they asked for people saying, would you like to volunteer? And unlike every other vaccine you've ever heard of, they had a metric ask ton of it. So they just allowed people to do it under the condition. I signed the piece of paper like a lot of you did. I could read it. Just read the damn thing. By getting this vaccine, you're agreeing that you are basically testing an untested product. Don't have to do it. No mandates allowed. But because so many people were involved in literally a full test, using a methodology that did not involve components from the original disease at all, and almost no ability to contaminate, the study went from being 10 years or 2 years long to being several months. Actually, about a year. Because how many of you volunteered for a vaccine study? Most of you didn't. People were lining up everywhere because people were dropping dead from it. The disease. Well, that seems suspicious. Not if you saw people going around the corner, around the block, requesting it. Some of those people out there claimed that it was a compromise doing that. Not exactly when people were demanding it. You have a vaccine, why are you keeping it from us? And then suddenly, oh, you're using us as guinea pigs. February 2021, he was quietly fired from Baylor Scott White Medical Center. Confidential separation agreement was used, which was a mistake. Texas A&M College of Medicine, Texas Christian University, and University of North Texas Health Science Center School of Medicine all cut ties with him. He was a teacher at some of them. That's a great loss. Why did they do it? Hydroxychloroquine promotion. And other things they're not allowed to talk about because they agreed not to whistleblow on them, I guess. Or not. March, an edited video of his statements before the Texas Senate Committee was used as propaganda by a conservative activist group that he's a member of. It's a fake association calling itself American Physicians and Surgeons. It isn't. It has mostly politicians and pundits, and some big pharma and big placebo salespeople, and political hit groups. They promote HIV, AIDS denialism, fake vaccine autism links, and fake breast cancer hypotheses and studies. Studies have been found to be literally made up from whole cloth. They're the polar opposite of a medical association. Anybody associating with them is begging to be called a snake oil salesman. He also said later on, there's no evidence of asymptomatic spread in COVID-19. But a lot of you got tested and say, I'm not showing any symptoms. So you got another test. Still showed symptoms. No symptoms. You just had been exposed and were carrying it. He refused to prove that asymptomatic spread didn't exist, even though there's plenty of proof it does. April, he said there's tens of thousands of people dead from the vaccine. But there aren't, and he refused to prove it. When confronted with information showing that he was simply wrong or making a mistake, he doubled down and yelled it louder and said, "Get your hydroxychloroquine." In May, he said COVID survivors can't get reinfected and refused to prove it. Meanwhile, a lot of you, including people who contacted me, have said that they'd lost a relative after they got sick early in the pandemic, which should have immunized them, and they dropped dead later. And I've lost 2 friends over it. Probably more. I'm just afraid to email anybody. Survivors can't get reinfected. Then where are my 2 friends? Because he violated the confidential separation agreement, getting fired but saving some face, he's being taken to court over it. He said he was still the vice chief in internal medicine at Baylor University Medical Center. He could lose his certification from the American Board of Internal Medicine, not because he's a hero or a little passionate or, a rebel. He was a rebel before with helping people. No, it's because he violated a rule. Spreading inaccurate or inappropriate medical advice to the general public and individuals without doing a diagnosis or examination. A doctor that gives you medical advice without examining you, or gives a pat answer for something that's in contest, it's a contested treatment, is committing medical malpractice or murder. So, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Dr. Peter McCullough. I don't have the ability to prove it, but I wouldn't be surprised in a few months or years or whenever he drops dead and we get a hold of the paperwork, we find out that he isn't a hawk up to his eyeballs to somebody and had to promote this, or worse, willingly did so because he figured he would be able to get more money out of it, or maybe he got his house paid off in return for promotion of it. He's been doing the talk show circuit, Fox News, all the regular things. Back when conservative meant a person that didn't do things that were reckless, I don't think he would be tolerated. The group he's associated with has been around for a very long time and has advocated against things like medical system having low prices, Social Security existing, because, all the tax money you paid in, mostly to Social Security, shouldn't come back to you in your 60s. And there's a little scuttlebutt about this, I can't prove it, but the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons, which is a fake association in my opinion, and it should be understood that way, has also apparently promoted not letting veterans collect their benefits because they deserve what they got because they wouldn't have got caught. This is like a Trump thing. Y'all punish vets who lost an arm or a leg to a bomb. He's associated with a group that I wouldn't comment on. And he also broke his own rules that he said people should be, not doing medical work the right way. You should be, quote, they should be heating up an iron, shove it up your butt. This is the guy who's going back on his own teaching. And he's effectively ostracized himself from teaching the next generation to be able to do what he did when he wasn't doing this buffoonery. I'm hoping he gets over this, or maybe isn't up to hawking his eyeball isn't hawked, or whatever that's caused this. I hope someday that he goes back to being a doctor at some quiet clinic somewhere saving lives like he's supposed to be doing. I hope he still has a practice where he's saving people's lives. I hope he isn't telling them to do things that get them killed. I don't have an opinion of him at this point. I'm just going to stop the video. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck.